Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm your host, Shana James. Excited to be here today to talk about success in maybe some unconventional terms and what we think of as success, and then what success actually is. My Facebook business page, is true success for men. And the idea is that what we think of as success can often be empty. It's like, oh, we're striving to reach a certain level of, career success or financial success or relationship success, but it can be almost a facade or a mask of like, oh, now I can validate myself. I've gotten there, but I may not even really be in it. I may not really be enjoying it, satisfied by it, feeling the peace, feeling the relaxation. So my guest today, Wiley McGraw, is very, well-versed on this topic. It sounds like from your own life, as well as the men who you work with. Yes. So thank you for being here today to talk about success and high performance and not having to settle or sacrifice, right? Being able to actually enjoy life.
Yes, Shana, thank you for having me. And that's a great way to start, is learning the differences between proper sacrifice and improper sacrifice. And I think we tend to bleed those two together. We hear that word and we're automatically defining it in our own minds that we have to sacrifice to succeed in life. And then what success means to us is, well, I've got to be able to become financially stable first before I can turn around and have satisfaction or happiness in any other area of my life. So then we override and we unnecessarily sacrifice relationships, health, intimacy, love, connection, all for the sake of building something that we think we're supposed to build. And then it turns around all these years later, and then we're wondering why our lives have actually been crumbling behind us in the wake of all of that growth.
Yeah. I'm imagining being a man who, for some, it's like, okay, I've attained a certain level of success. For others, there's still, I think, often that sense of, I haven't made it yet. I haven't reached those goals. But I think that's also a product of the same mindset, that sense of never really ever reaching or being satisfied with the attainments or the achievements.
It comes down to the idea that we see people emulating others that have more than us, and we're taught that we should strive to be like those people if we want to know what success means. Mm-hmm. Again, success is actually subjective, even though we are taught that it's objective. Mm-hmm. It means this is our bank account, this is our notoriety, this is where our businesses have gone, this is where we've achieved a certain level of status. And if you don't have that, somehow you're not successful. And what ends up happening is, especially with men, but I know that women end up getting infected by men and their mindsets, is that we don't appreciate the small successes that we go through in our daily lives. Yeah. We don't, even for me, when I wake up in the morning, to me, that's success in itself. I get to,
actually another day.
Upright and breathing, and everything else is the bonus. Wow. And appreciating the success that you got to get up with your two arms, your two legs, your vision, your hearing, your physical body that you can always work on and improve, where there are other people that don't have that. When
Wow.
we override those small successes then and wonder why we never experience the bigger successes,
Mm.
we end up becoming burnt out on this constant grind to try to achieve more. And then it feels like we're in this perpetual state of chasing an idea rather than experiencing it.
Okay, so that's a profound perspective, that even waking up in the morning with your limbs, your vision, your breath, like that's success.
Yes.
And most people, I don't think, view it that way. So how did you come to that view?
Accumulation, I would say, over the years of my life experiences, from being a competitive athlete, a competitive bull rider, getting into the military, especially when I went to war. I think the war really brought it all together, being in combat and seeing the worst of humanity, being a
Yeah.
part of certain special operations and things like that, that gave me this clarity of how much or how precious life really is, and why
Mm.
success can define any aspect of living. And for me, when I got home from 3 tours of being overseas, just the idea of getting to touch, fresh grass, breathing
Wow.
clean air, having cold beverages to drink, waking up in a warm bed, having
Mm.
running water, when I experienced many of those moments without those things,
Yeah.
allowed me to redefine for myself and recognize, as human beings in general, that if we can start appreciating those small wins in our life, meeting new people and having really great conversation, getting to achieve the smallest feats when it comes to helping others, or bettering our health or our mindset or our focus, any little tiny thing I started to experience when I got out of the military really was to me successful. And then you
Wow.
compound on that, and you build, and it naturally becomes this almost effortless way of experiencing capacity growth and
Yeah.
transformation in a way that we tend to not think about.
No, and I feel moved to the point where I can like feel the tears behind my eyes of imagining you. Thank you, for your service. And
Of course.
then coming back and right, just a warm bed and running water, and how easy it is to distract ourselves from knowing what we actually have, and being grateful for what we actually have. And then I love the perspective of, oh, we can call that success. That actually is success.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. Small successes build up to bigger successes. I know that might sound cliche to your audience, but it's
No, but
really
it's
true.
true.
Is where it just, when I get up in the morning and I get to walk outside and see the beautiful mountains, to me, that's the start of my successful day. I look at it as, let me be grateful and appreciative of the fact that I get to do this. I get to be
Yeah.
here. I have the opportunities afforded to me of being in this place. So what am I going to do with that? Am I going
Yes.
to squander it by being worried about not having more over here? Or am I going to utilize this experience as a fuel source
Yeah.
for what tasks I might have to do to the day running my own business, what potential client problems I have to deal with, or whatever media that I'm getting into, whatever the projects that are on my table don't feel so daunting anymore, because I'm feeling my
Mm-hmm.
ability to stay focused in those projects, knowing that I have a purpose, I have a beacon. And these
Mm.
little successes to me are just like drivers to appreciate the fact that I get to do what I do out in the world. And it just
Yeah.
becomes this unbelievable feeling inside, which then transitions that worry about having a client or making the money or growing even further.
Mm.
Doesn't come into my sphere of influence. It just
No, I can
becomes,
feel that. I can feel how, like you just said, right? That feeling inside, the fullness, and yeah,
yeah,
it pushes out the worry.
it does.
Mm-hmm.
There's no worry anymore. It's not there. I don't have anything to worry about. And really, when we worry, what we're doing is we're disconnected from what we say we want. We're misaligned from what purpose or direction we say we're all about. That
Mm.
worry is similar to prayer. It's your, whatever you worry about, you can in fact create. So the more you worry about something, the least likely you're going to be focused on what actually matters, and the more you're going to experience those negative or not so good situations. And then it's going to
Yeah.
compound over here, and you're going to wonder why you got veered off this crazy path and you ended up at this dead end, turning back and going, but I was supposed to be on that path over there.
Wow. Okay. So did you actually say there's nothing to worry about?
Well, we create worry. I
Yeah.
look at it as and in my experience being from the military, especially, was
Yeah.
we tend to worry and fear more in imagination than we do in real life. We
Yes.
create things to worry about. Now, I'm not
Yes.
saying there aren't real worries to have out there when people are struggling in their lives, dealing with, cost of living, problems in family dynamics.
Yeah,
But
that's what I was thinking. It would be good to go into some of those because, those are real, but how you
yes,
actually hold that in a different way.
right. And I'm not saying that I don't have moments where I don't think about, okay, there's so much going on, that feeling that's similar to worry can show up, but it's what we do with it then makes a
Mm,
difference in our ability to perform in the face of those stressful moments.
okay. So what do you do with it? How do you, let's get into the gritty part of what do you
But
actually do?
we could back up to it and recognize that the way we transform ourselves to get into a place to be able to utilize stress as an asset first is us being willing to face the demons that plague us.
Yeah.
One of my biggest things in the work that I do, and I know you talk about it quite a bit with intimacy and vulnerability, creates satisfaction and fulfillment, and it
Yeah.
does. But people are afraid of those elements. They feel
Totally.
that it's weakness, and sometimes it can be. Sometimes people will take advantage of that and use that
Mm-hmm.
against you. But
Mm-hmm.
when it comes down to it, is being willing to face those, I call them demons, those stresses, traumas, setbacks that we carry around inside us. Until we're willing to battle those head on, we're never really going to understand what stress actually is, the differences between normal stresses of living a human life versus the stresses that come from those negative life experiences.
Yeah.
And then we will never recognize our ability to then utilize them as an asset for our growth and for
Mm-hmm.
our success. So what I was able to do, and what I do now for powerful, prominent people, is put them in the environments that allow them to face and battle through those demons together with me by their side, so that we can recognize the normal stresses they experience are assets for them.
Yeah.
Learning how to take that situation and let it power you, not something that hinders you. And that comes
Mm,
from a capacity to be able to be feeling at your best place in that moment, peace, some satisfaction, an ability to recognize that when I'm faced with these moments, I know exactly how to move through them. I know how to manage them. I know how to utilize them as this resource for my leadership. And then the results become completely different from
mm,
whether you would actually, let that stress take you down and cause you to be irritated at life, cause you to be mad about things that are going on around you. So it really does require us to actually go down the hard path of facing our own truth first, so that we can
yes.
then turn around and make our way through to that place of using stress as an asset versus it being a detriment to who we are.
I love that. I mean, right. If we could all use stress as an asset instead of a detriment,
Yeah.
the world would be a much different place because people are really stressed these days. There's so much
Yes.
stress around.
Yes. Well, then they're stressed because there's no space in between within them, energetically, emotionally, mentally, even physically, even spiritually, all of it holistically. That when you don't have enough space in between to recognize that, what is the stress that I'm experiencing right now? And how can I utilize or turn it towards something to benefit what I'm doing, benefit the people I'm supporting?
Mm,
It's just a knee jerk reaction to the stress that we all have as human beings. We have not
interesting.
stretched our capacity wide enough to recognize the
Huh,
differences in types of stress that we face.
I like that. Okay, so it sounds like there's a slowing down and becoming more conscious and aware enough to know the difference between the different kinds of stress.
Correct. And you
Uh-huh.
said it very well, Shane. Is the slowing down part is the hardest part for people, especially when you have a high
Especially,
achievement
oh
mindset.
my gosh, right?
But recognizing the biggest thing, and I use this analogy all the time, the military teaches it very well. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So
Oh,
it's about
someone just said that to me this morning. Or no,
great.
was it yesterday? Oh, it was yesterday. I was working with a client. He was like, I want to go faster. And I was like, okay. Sometimes when I work with men, I, remind them that sometimes
Yes.
slower actually leads to getting you somewhere faster, farther. Yeah. And
Right,
he said,
right. When you take deep breaths and you slow down just enough, it doesn't mean stop, and it doesn't mean you got to completely disassociate from what you're doing, but it's
yeah.
slowing down a little bit, taking a step back and re-intimately connecting to those fundamentals of what you're doing. Then
Mm-hmm.
naturally builds up speed. So it's the same thing with weapons marksmanship in the military, being in combat arms. That's how we were becoming lethal with our weapon systems, is because we are taught
Interesting.
how to slow down, take deeper breaths, hold the breath properly, aim
Really?
different, slow down your trigger pull, get to a place where you become more surprised by the reaction of the weapon system versus expectation of the weapon system going off.
Wow.
That
Interesting.
little tweak I took out into the world when I got out, and I've utilized it since to become successful in my life and in the business that I run, is because
Mm.
it's all about taking a step back and reevaluating your approach to that situation.
That's amazing. The thing that also strikes me is that there are men who come back from being in service and on tour and really struggle and, kind of downward spiral kind of struggles. And I'm curious how you went the other way, right? Like there's something in you that really took what you got and feels like there's a kind of awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like an ignition or an eruption. One of my biggest things is recognizing eruptions happen constantly when we have
Mm-hmm.
people that interact with each other and someone says something to another person and they react to it. That's an eruption. That's somebody erupting a stress,
Yeah.
or I call them demons. A lot of time they come out when they're being challenged or triggered in certain situations or dynamics.
Yep.
But for me, what you just shared with the military was I started to recognize in the throes of combat that I was built a little bit differently than a lot of the people that I grew up around or that I was around as a soldier. And I
Yeah.
started to, I want to say, course myself back. I started to jot backwards and go, wait a minute. So this makes sense now. When I was young as a kid, people would bring all of their stress to me no matter what I was doing. It's like even trying to be an athlete, be a star baseball player, no matter what I did, people were constantly popcorning their own chaos around me in my presence.
Interesting.
And I never understood that. My family did that. Everyone around me did that. And I always felt like something was wrong with me.
Oh,
Something was off with
interesting.
me.
Because it sounds to me like you're a safe place for that to happen.
Well, I didn't understand that until all these
Yeah.
years later. But as a kid growing up and trying to focus on being this, loving, caring, compassionate young man, but then I was being bombarded with all of this chaos around me and dynamics around
Mm-hmm.
family and their friends, etc. Then getting into the place where if I wasn't perfect in my sports, then there was hell to pay for that. I broke away and went into the world of bull riding because that was the place where I felt I can unleash more of this wild side of Wiley. I
Bull
could be me,
riding.
my own man, and I could
Wow.
do it, choose something I wanted. But
Uh-huh.
even in the bull riding world, I had altercations with cowboys and things because they brought all of their chaos to me. So when I
Wow.
got in the military and I was in war and I was leading my men, I thought, you know what, something is different, but I don't think there's something wrong with me. I think there's something else going on here. And I need to just be willing to recognize because I can see the blind spots in how people perform with their
Yeah.
behaviors, with the way they
Yeah.
talk, the way they act. It's not coming from some psychological issue. There's something
No.
deeper going on here that I can see.
Yeah.
And what is happening is when I infuse my energy into someone's life, they erupt. They bring all of those things out. And I went, that's an asset. So what
Yes.
do I do with that? When I
Yeah.
got home from the military, I thought, you know what? I want to know what that means. What can I utilize that for? And so I got on that path of that self mastery. I wanted to learn more about me, and I
Yeah.
wanted to heal and resolve any and every demon that I may have been carrying around first,
Yeah.
so that I can build something of my own to then provide people the same atmosphere so that they can do the same for themselves or with my
Beautiful.
support, which
Yeah.
is why now I recognize that it's important for us to face those truths, those ugly truths that we kind of we don't want to look at, you know. So that's what really ended up happening. Now there are a lot of veterans that get out of the military that are powerful people that have a lot of value to
Yeah.
give the world. They just have never been given the right environments to erupt their own stresses.
Yes.
So the nature of my work started working with combat vets, providing them that atmosphere.
Wow.
And through that work where I was in the trenches with them, side by side with them, battling
Yeah.
those demons, I was
Yeah.
able to accelerate their results, better relationships, sleeping peaceful at night, getting off their medications, having been
Wow.
able to sustain jobs, feeling more
Amazing.
fulfilled, even though they're still dealing with a little combat stress. And
Yeah.
that's when the VA took notice, and then they started introducing me to people, and my business kind of took off from there.
Wow. Very cool. So neat. And you talk
Quite the ride.
yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it. You talked a little before we started recording about how when we look at this holistically, like when we look at success holistically, that it can actually be sustainable. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Of course. We hear the word holistically. I know right away people probably thought, they're hearing this right now between you and I going, what is holistic? Is this some woo-woo term?
Yeah.
And, it's, all the spiritual people use that term. But in reality, holistic just means whole picture.
Right.
So we again, our society, our culture has bred us all for generations to look at life asymmetrically.
Yeah.
It's compartmentalization to the max, where if we don't like something, we just stuff it down or suck it up. That's a better way to look at it. And then we have to override that and sacrifice so that we can achieve, success from a monetary standpoint. And I look at success itself. If you think money and notoriety are the benchmarks of what success means, I'm sorry to say this, but I'm not sorry to say that those are dying metrics.
Yeah.
They no longer matter anymore.
Yeah.
How well you live your life holistically is what
Is the
is the
actual.
impetus for you to be even more successful without all the chaos that you're used to. And
Wow.
if you want life to be that way, you've got to approach your human performance from a holistic standpoint, recognizing that if all areas of my life are not simultaneously in an optimal state, I will suffer.
Mm.
My success might be something good, but it won't be something best. And if I'm not willing to face how my relationships suffer, how my health might be deteriorating, if my mindset is a little bit limited, my ability to manage and utilize stress properly,
Yeah.
all elements of who we are matter when it comes to our focus and our ability to create out in the world. We have leaders that have built their empires on the backs of their chaos from childhoods. Yes, they might have billions of dollars. They might have built rocket ships. They might have built really cool car systems. They might have done all these great things that advance technology, but look how they're acting and interacting with people out
Right.
in society.
Yeah.
You really want to emulate that kind of person and think that, well, I'm just going to chalk it up to they're just kind of weird and eclectic, but look what they've done for us. To me,
Right.
that is like
No.
limitation in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I want to see the people that are leading us living the most optimal lives so that what they are creating
That
only
would be
uplifts
amazing.
everybody around them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that. Right. So that they actually uplift people around them instead of taking people
Dividing
down.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. And dividing us.
Infecting us with all of their chaos and their weirdness and making people
Yeah.
kind of get confused about what's really going on with that person. That's not good for humanity
No.
whatsoever. Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not. Okay. The other thing we were talking about is intimacy. So on that note, right,
Mm,
you mentioned that there's no success without intimacy, which seems like it follows what you just said too, right? Like
yeah.
if we're not actually aware of all of these different levels of our own health and well-being and our own shadows and light and all of that, then, the success, we're not going to feel the success. We're never going to feel that peace. How do you bring intimacy into that?
I start with first and foremost, I recognized when I got out of the military, what you just talked about a few minutes ago, was this massive gap in personal development and people's ability to transform their lives. I just recognized it when I would go around talking to, connecting to different types of household name type coaches, reading different materials, books, just looking for the atmospheres that I knew I needed to become my best. And
Yeah.
when I was in these environments, just pursuing different ways in which I can know more about myself, I found these huge gaps in transformation come from people's inability to be intimate with themselves, first and foremost, what that really
Mhm.
is looks like.
Yeah.
And then second of all the offerings that were provided to people were very, I would say, I want to use this word lightly, but disassociating. It's easy to build a
Huh.
program and to pitch a program to someone, let someone figure it out on their own through the steps that you've built out for them. And I'm not saying that they don't have results that come along with it, but real transformation itself, and truly transforming a human life, requires a resource to be intimate with their clients, to be
Mm-hmm.
involved in their clients' lives.
Yeah.
But most people are not even built to do that kind of thing. They're
Yeah.
not willing to go into those trenches and see those depths of someone's messiness that is really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So for me, it became this desire to bring about what real intimacy is supposed to feel and look like in
Mm.
a loving dynamic while still transforming a human life. And
Mm.
that can be very arduous for people because we have thought intimacy to be this soft, loving, fluffy kind of feeling, and then we see anything else that doesn't match that as dangerous or a threat to who we are, our own protection.
Oh,
So
okay.
we
Will you say, yeah, say
segregate.
more. Will you
Yeah.
say more about that? There's that
Which
there's
one?
an
Which part?
idea that intimacy should be soft or loving. So then how do
Right.
you see intimacy or define intimacy or hold
Finding
intimacy?
intimacy that way is getting people out of their head
Okay.
and off of the idea that what they think to be true about somebody who's loving them and carrying them may not necessarily be true. It may not, in fact, just be their own demon speaking for them. It may
Right. And
be
the
their own
willingness
fear.
to be
Yep.
curious in the moment and to not have that righteousness of, oh, I'm right and this is how you are. And then there's no intimacy there.
Right. And what ends up happening, and I'll use our emotional, guidance aspect of what people would chalk up to be negative emotions versus positive emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Our emotions are just emotions.
Right.
And one of the things, I've had so many different people I know, they're psychologists, and they talk about anger and rage and all those things are bad. They're negative, and they're not. They're actually, all emotions have benefit to us. It's our reaction and our use of our emotions that create
Yes.
negative situations or positive situations.
Yep. Agreed.
Rage and anger are a necessity when you're feeling stuck in your life. You need them
Mm-hmm.
to create and stimulate energy for you to move out of that space that you're in.
Yes.
But what ends up happening is we abuse those emotions like we do with everything else,
Right. We
and
take it out on others, or
we
we are
stay in
not.
anger, we stay in
Mm-hmm.
rage, and we don't get out of it and go to the next level, which you
Mm-hmm.
have. Depression is the lowest on the totem pole when it comes to our emotions, but people
Mm-hmm.
get stuck in depression, and then it becomes a chronic issue that we now chalk up as a mental disease. And at the
Right.
end of the day, it's still an emotion.
Yeah.
So getting out of that requires active effort to go from depression to rage, which stimulates movement, rage to anger, anger to frustration, frustration up to irritation. And as you climb that ladder, you start to see things change around you. And going back
Mm-hmm.
to what you had asked, is it's about feeling into the situations that you're in, not thinking it. You got to get out of this overworked mind that we have, as especially in America. Is like we just overwork our minds and we shut off our intuition. We completely
Yeah.
kill that side of us that can't recognize that I might be intense. I might be in your life saying things that are challenging, that are scary, but that doesn't mean I lack love. That doesn't mean I lack intimacy. And that does
Mm,
not mean I lack care for you. But what we do is
interesting.
we choose our resources based on how feel good it is. And if somebody feels scary to us, we chalk it up as a threat. And we
Ah,
never explore what benefit that situation might be there to provide us.
yeah. I mean, I wish that there were more examples as we were growing up of people who could feel scary, but also safe, right? Like who could bring that truth with love. And I think we, unfortunately, in the world continue to see, intensity as that kind of chaotic, unhealthy, right? There aren't a lot of
Right.
examples of like that kind of, I don't want to say tough love because that actually I think is a little bit different, but
It is. Yeah.
honest love, right?
Well, that's the thing is love itself, love by itself. I know people are going to hear me say this and they're instantly going to go, oh, love itself actually does not change the world. And I
Mm-hmm.
will that to the day that I die will argue that philosophy, because if love by itself was truly capable of transforming this world,
Yeah.
we would not be in the state that we're in right now with how divisive we are, how much we fight, how much we argue. But it's ugly truth
Yeah.
riding the wave of love that changes the world. And what people are doing is they're avoiding the truth about
Uh-huh.
themselves, and they're thinking that they're going to bypass that uncomfortable place to be in so they can just think their way through life from positive thoughts and feel good, sensations. And that is just unfortunately a circumvention of what truth really is. And until you face your truth, you're never going to really know what intimacy, love, connection actually you're supposed to feel like, because loving someone means challenging them. Loving
Mm-hmm.
someone means fighting them through the crap that does not serve their best and highest good. Loving
Interesting.
someone is seeing the real them behind their addictions, their dysfunctions, their stress, the chaos, and doing whatever you have to do to shake them up and rattle them from within so you can get that real version out in front. And that's what I do for powerful and prominent leaders.
Yeah.
Because when I get into these trenches with them, I shake them up and I challenge them and I make them face these demons. Their results, like more money, better
Yeah.
relationships,
Those
healthier
actually
sex lives,
happen. Yeah.
all exponentially accelerates in a
Yeah.
way they never thought was possible. But it only comes from my ability to get in there and shake them up.
Yeah. I was just thinking about how a lot of people say, like, I want to be loved unconditionally. And how oftentimes in romantic relationships, like we want unconditional love. But, and then, the phrase unconditional positive regard that
Yeah.
has struck me recently as like, oh, it's not really unconditional love. It's like unconditional positive regard. Like I see the best in you. I see who you are. I see beyond, whatever you're doing that's creating harm. And we could talk about that. We can talk about that and I can bring it with love.
Well, you can challenge them
Yeah. With
because
love, right? Like
with
it
love,
doesn't have to
well,
be
that's
an
the thing.
asshole challenge.
Love. That's the thing is, and I love that you said that. If someone is perpetuating an energy of being a jerk while they're
Yeah.
trying to like push someone through, you can feel the difference. When
Yes.
you are at your set point, your max set point of being love and being someone who cares at your core,
Yeah.
you can say very choice words to people,
Right.
and they're still going to know and feel the love through that, even though they're
Yes, that's
mentally
what
going to
I'm
be like,
saying.
I don't like that you said that, but darn it, I know that you care.
Exactly.
There's a difference there, because there are things that I say that people go, wow, but they recognize and feel how much I actually give a crap about them, which is why
Yes.
I'm in their
Which
lives
is
with
why
them,
you're
which is
in
why I'm
it. Yeah.
here.
Why you're in their lives, why you're saying it in the first place. Right. Which
Right.
is very different from someone trying to tell you how you should be or what's, this is the right way. Like that's a
Right.
completely different stance.
A lot of the times when you feel that intuitively, especially, it's like, you should probably do this, tends to sometimes come from the fact that that person feels very insecure or uncomfortable around you,
Right.
and wants you to change a little bit so they can kind of stay connected into that. And these are the dynamics that are dysfunctional, but they're so subtle that most people don't recognize.
Yeah.
They think, well, that's just my friend, oh, that's just my brother or sister, that's who they are. And they don't realize there's a way in which that dynamic is being manipulated and used. And until
Yeah.
you erupt it, until you shake it from within and reorient the dynamic, we're going to consistently
Yes.
perpetuate the dysfunctions of our society. And it starts with
Yeah.
leadership, starts with
Yeah.
people in positions of power and influence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
I can feel my brain shaken up a little bit, right? Like it's that good kind of, all right, let's look at this from a different perspective and think
Sure.
about this and the, the subjective nature of success and all of this.
And Shana, that's the other thing too, and I'm glad that you said that. Let me look at it from a different perspective. And I would love your audience to sit here and hold on to these perspectives, but
Yeah.
recognize that what I'm sharing isn't just my perspective from experience. It is truth I've discovered through interacting in these dynamics with very powerful people, and what I've learned to discover about who I am, what I'm meant to do. And the same thing can go for them. Is not everything in life is just a matter of perspective or someone's opinion.
Mm.
There are just fact, truths that are out there that we as human beings we can't compartmentalize it, change it, make it different. What I'm talking about is fact and truth, is the fact that we have unresolved stresses or demons inside us, whatever yours
Uh-huh.
might be. It's not, if I say, hey, that's because XYZ, that's not my perspective. That's because I can recognize this is what's actually plaguing you, and you
Yeah.
need to do something about it right now. And it may not consciously be something you can agree with in the moment, but it
Yeah.
doesn't change the truth that that's still there. And that's the difference
It's
when we
so
start to
interesting. Right. I noticed
learn.
my hackles went up a little bit, but then when you said like, okay, the fact is that we all have that, but like, I don't necessarily know that someone needs to do something about it right now. But I think what you're talking about is in the context of you want this result. This is, that result is not happening. If you actually want that to happen, something in here's got to change, right? Something in those demons or those dynamics.
You have to be put into the right, I would call it the right container, the right environment that really challenges you and stretches your capacity, because it's easy to control your resources and kind of be a little comfortable with what you're doing. But if you're the type of person who says, I want to be my best, I want to be successful, I want to have the best relationships, I want to be optimal, I want to know what it's like to experience peace, you have to do something about it now. You can't,
Mm.
the idea that we can sit back and go, well, I'm not ready to do it. Well, then you're never going to be ready to do it, because you're always going to have a reason why you're never ready. And that is the excuse of the human condition, where we think we want to be uncomfortable. We think we know what a discomfort is supposed to look and feel like, but we don't really know what that experience is supposed to actually feel for us. When
Mm.
you're put outside of your real comfort zone, it scares you and it
Yeah.
rattles you so much inside that fear starts to show up.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is people don't like that feeling. They don't like unconditional vulnerability. They don't like
Yeah.
surrendering to the control. And they reach back for something to hold on to, and
Yes.
they push away the thing that scared them that way. And they never really grow,
Mm.
because I
Right.
guarantee
If you
most
keep
people,
if you keep reaching back for that thing that was comfortable, then you're not going to
yeah.
grow.
Well, think about how we're born. We're born through a destructive process of the birth. But right away, what we get, they pull us out of the womb and they put us right into a blanket and they swaddle us. They put us right into this comfort. And
Yeah.
then for the first few years of our life, we are comforted.
Yeah.
We're babied. We're taken care of. So we start to develop this connection to comfort as growth. And then what
Uh-huh.
ends up happening is we then have to actively seek out arduous environments
Discomfort.
to
Uh-huh.
stretch and actually become more what we want.
Yeah.
That's why the military is so good at it, because they challenge you and stretch you every single day for 24 hours a day,
Wow.
months on end, to make you elite so that you can operate from a very efficient standpoint. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this. Is there any last thing you want to say? I know I always have the sense of like we could go on forever, but any last thing you want to say today for our listeners?
I just, for me, it's if there are people out there listening, like I really want that what Shane and Wiley are talking about, but I don't want to do that. Sounds like really hard work to do.
Yeah.
That sounds scary. That's because it's supposed to be something you do. And here's the thing: it's almost like when you first learn how to ride a bike, you got to take the training wheels off eventually so you can learn your balance. If you have training wheels on for the rest of your life because you're a little worried about falling over, sometimes you got to fall over and skin your knee to get back up and go, you know what? Now I know what not to do. Now I know what to do. And the biggest thing is people thinking that fear means danger. Fear means change. Fear means you're facing transformation. And when it shows up, you've got to learn how to yield to that fear and use that fear as the impetus for you to know you're facing something good for you. We're not in a place anymore where we're running from wild animals. We're not faced with falling off cliffs. We're not those old prehistoric versions of ourselves. Yeah. So when you feel fear, when you're with a coach, a matchmaker, et cetera, when you stimulate that sense, that means, oh my goodness, real change is in front of me.
Yes,
and if I don't
real change is happening.
To yield to the fear, I'm never going to be pushed through this threshold to actually expand my capacity to become more. And the last thought I'll share here is that fear is not something you can override. It's not something you can get rid of. It's always going to be a part of you. Yeah. You need to understand that it's there for a reason. And when we can learn to utilize it, yield to it properly, what ends up happening is it can be dissipated down within us and it can become a fuel source for more of our success and more of our growth.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, fear is interesting. I think for so many of us, like we want to get rid of it, right? And we want to overcome it and move beyond it. But
you're wasting your energy and your time. And what it does is fractures your focus from what really matters. Instead of you welcoming it as a partner, say, you know what, I know you're here. I don't like the way it feels right now, but what I'm going to do is yield to it, much like driving on an on-ramp to a freeway. You're learning how to blend into that traffic and yield to that fear, because fear can be an asset for you so that when you're facing real change, you know it. And then when you're actually facing a real threat, then you really know it. And it becomes this beautiful dance of knowing yourselves in a way that you've never thought was possible.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here and for, blowing the lid off of
my pleasure.
humanity and what's possible. And I really am just even going back to that first moment of recognizing, okay, success, the fact that we are living, breathing, that we have one more day and building from there. So
how well are you living your life? And are you appreciating the smaller successes so that you can compound and build off of them? Yeah. Because that's what will fuel your ability to manage and handle bigger successes. That's what will actually reduce your normal stress much more significantly as you climb that ladder, rather than your stress growing with your success. Is being appreciative of those small little successes every single day and letting them be these popcorn elements of your overall human performance.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Shannon. Thank you.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.